that they would have dictated it to.
But you know that all the Gospels, the 4 Gospels that we have, none of the Gospels after whom they are named are the actual authors, and this is based on Christian scholars and academia, and they'll tell you this because, like you said, some of these people, they were quite basically they were just simple fishermen. So for them to actually write such works as the Gospels and with the sophisticated Greek that's been used in there, it would be very unlikely for a fisherman to pen such a thing. So if you look at most of the scholars, they'll tell you that these are not the scholars. They were written sometimes.
Generally speaking, when you wanted something written down, you would have a scribe who would write it down. Not many people would say, I'm going to get my candle out and my parchment, I'm going to sit down and jot everything that I remember. It would be done over a period of time with people who could write, and they could write in Greek. So they would understand. So 100%,
Okay, you know, for the scribe to write, sometimes you have to dictate to them. So what you're talking about is these scribes wrote it down. They would have actually changed what John actually said. Because if you look at an academic person, how they speak and how they present themselves, it's quite different to how a fisherman would speak and present themselves. You see what I mean? So it's not just a pure case of where one person dictates and the other writes it down. But in the case of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he was unlettered, he didn't know how to read and write, and he never claimed that what he's saying is what the Quran is from him. He said the Quran is from Allah. So he was dictated.
How did he know what was written down?
They would read it back to him, and he had memorized it.
But even if they read it back to him, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they wrote down. I mean, if we want to chase this argument around that unlettered people couldn't verify what they wrote.
If it was one person, I understand. That could happen. So you dictate to someone and they would write something other than what you dictated. But if you got like hundreds of people doing the same, then there is very little chance for the same message to be corrupted.
We need oral tradition to back up.
No, but you think, in terms of oral tradition, you know, even the weakest hadith in Islam, which date even like 200 years after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even the weakest hadith, they have a chain of narration. We have the chain of narration. We have the actual mouth on the body. So in hadith science, this is what is verified: the chain, the matan, the body, and then within the chain, each person, their biography in the history, which is called ilm al-rijal. So if you look at the veracity with which it has been preserved, I don't think it's comparable to any other faith out there in terms of how the hadiths have been preserved, how the Quran has been preserved. So you do not find, so for example, if I told you to go to any mosque in London today, you will find in most of the masajid, in most of the mosques, you'll find children studying the Quran, and they memorize it from the Quran. So every Ramadan we have the completion of the Quran, in the night prayers, and this happens throughout the world, whether you live in a Arab country or a non-Arab country, so you find it in Muslim countries, you find it like in Britain and other Western countries.
This may be something that you wouldn't be aware of. You might be, but most people wouldn't. That within the community of believers, which gave us our sacred scriptures, there was something called episcopal succession. Episcopal succession means the laying on of hands, the transmission of authority through the laying of hands. You'll see it in Isaiah, where the key of David is given, laid on his chest, and you'll see here in the Old Testament, you'll see this is the way that succession was. It was now Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, because Moses had laid his hands upon him, and the Israelites heeded it. The next one, Moses did as the Lord commanded. He took Joshua and had him stand before Eleazar, the priest, before the whole community. He laid his hands upon him, he commissioned him. And then you've got the New Testament church. Then they laid hands on them that they might receive the Holy Spirit. These men stood before the apostles who prayed and laid their hands upon them. They had ordained, which in Greek means laying hands, elders in every church. So my point is
symbolically transferring authority from person A to B.
Yeah, not symbolic. This is actually the real authority. So these writings come from in the community of people who were part of the Episcopal ordination. And as a Catholic, there is a list of popes. See, we have a president of our church, of the Catholic Church, of the Apostolic Church, and it mirrors the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin, which formed the governing body in Jerusalem, they had, I don't know how many members there were as part of the Sanhedrin. They had the high priest who was the presider. He spoke on behalf of
What was the function?
Say again?
As far as the scriptures are concerned, what was the function?
Right. Is you have your chain of narration and you can name them. I have a chain of succession, which all of these are part of the Orthodox Apostolic Church.
Can you name them?
Well, I can name the popes.
Okay, let me ask
Right.
you this.
Yeah.
The Old Testament revealed during the time of Moses. Yes. Between the time Moses was preaching the Torah, from the time Moses was preaching the Torah until the earliest extant manuscript. You know how many years gap there is? 1,000 years. Now you tell me, how will anyone fill that gap of 1,000 years from the time of Moses until the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are discovered like in the 70s or something? So you got more than 1,000 years of gap. I think 1,200 years or even more. Now you tell me, how can anyone fill that gap without a chain of narration? Yes, without any evidence of manuscripts, and without anything to know about who were the scribes or the ones who preserved this
I
work.
see what you're saying. So if we go to the earliest Old Testament, which is the Septuagint.
No, it's actually the
Septuagint is the earliest. The earliest copies of the Old Testament are in Greek. They're called the Septuagint. Then you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was about dated at least 120, 130 years after the date of the Septuagint. So we can say before Muhammad, there were the word extant copies of the Old Testament 900 years before my date.
Okay. I'm talking about just Moses, the time between Moses and the earliest extant manuscript. You got even with the Septuagint, you still have more than 1,000 years.
I think I understand your question now.
Yes.
It's a fairly mundane answer. It's the difference between papyrus and parchment. One or the other. It's parchment is the thing which the Dead Sea Scrolls was written on. Okay, and they last so much longer than papyrus, which would have been the material they would have written. Given the paper technology, if that's the right word, for you to have had copies of the Torah that go right back to there. They couldn't have happened. They wouldn't have.
No,
lasted.
but you see,
it's a bit like the Stones in the book.
But this is something that is not what I'm saying. Look, I'm not talking about how it can be preserved or why it wasn't preserved.
Sure.
The point still remains. Without the extant evidence, how will you link it back to Moses?
Can I use a Quranic verse?
You can use a Quranic verse.
Okay. And we sent following in their footsteps Jesus, the son of Mary, confirming that which had come before in the Torah. So Jesus, let's just follow this, let's break this down. At the time of Jesus, he is confirming what came before him in the Torah.
And how did Jesus get the knowledge?
Okay. Which Torah is he talking about? The one in existence or one that you would claim came through the mists of time that was lost?
The Torah that Jesus was taught,
Confirming.
because Allah says in the Quran he was given the knowledge of both the Torah and the Injil.
Sure.
And this was given to him since he was born, from the time he was born.
Yeah.
So it is not like he acquired it through the Jews or through some manuscripts.
So you're saying it wouldn't have been a paper?
It's something that is miraculous in the case of Jesus.
How come Waraka
Because
had an Arabic version of it then?
No, we're coming to that. Let's stick to one at a time. You talked about Jesus. I'm telling you about Jesus.
Sure.
So Jesus was given this knowledge miraculously. In terms of how he got it, that is given to him directly by God himself. So when Allah gives this knowledge to Jesus in his cradle, from that time onwards, because he says, I'm the messenger. Yes? No, the other prophets, they claim messengerhood and the prophethood at a much later date when they were like 30 or 40 years old.
Sure.
Jesus, on the other hand, not only was born miraculously, but his knowledge was given to him miraculously. And this is...
Give it to charity. I don't know. I wish it was mine, but I can't claim it. Not mine.
So what I'm saying,
I don't
is
know
that
paper money.
Jesus got this knowledge directly from God. So you cannot say that this Torah from whom was it? It is from God himself, who gave it directly to Jesus.
So what you're saying then, Hashim, is that the Torah that would have been around at the time of Moses, which is how many years did you say prior to the...
I think between Jesus and Moses, you got about 1,400 years, 1,300 years.
So what you're saying is you don't think that whatever appeared in the Septuagint would be anything like the original Torah, or there's no way of proving it?
There can be remnants.
Effectively.
There can be remnants of the Torah.
So why
Listen
would-
to Colin.
Yeah, go on, no, please.
So what do you find in the Torah today? So the Torah that we have today
Yeah.
and the New Testament that we have today,
Yeah.
the remnants of the truth of the Torah and the Injil, yes,
remnants.
remnants, yeah. And how we identify this is based on the Quran and Hadith. So if what is mentioned, for example, Deuteronomy 6:4,
Yeah.
yes, we say, "Hear, Israel, your Lord God is one."
Yeah.
We do not find any fault with that, because to claim and to proclaim that God is one
Yeah.
is something which fits within the Abrahamic faith. So we have no issues with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in fact, Islam would say that it got it from the foundation, and as it's part, we're all people of the book. You would say yes.
Some of the truth still remains in there, and that's the reason Allah says in the Quran the mention of Muhammad is both in the Torah and in the Injil. So if the Torah and Injil were corrupted, then why would Allah point to these books?
I can see how you can make
The
that
reason
case, but
Allah
I'm
points, because
puzzled,
there are some
Hashim.
truths still in
Yeah,
there.
I'm puzzled by these few verses. They who follow the messenger, the prophet who cannot read or write, whom they will find described in the Torah, yeah, and the gospel. This is the punchline with them.
Say again, sorry.
The punchline is, whom they will find described in the Torah and the gospel which are with them. Nobody's talking about the present tense, so you actually have them.
But that's what I just told you.
But you're saying-
Colin, I told you there are remnants of truth in there now.
But are these the remnant? When he's talking about they who follow the message of the prophet cannot read or write, and they will find described in the Torah and the gospel which are with them, are you saying that Torah and the gospel were accepted as corrupt
Those
by the Muslims?
Allah is not saying the whole Torah and the whole Injil.
Okay, Christian
Allah is
man.
mentioning about the reference to Prophet Muhammad in their books, which is still to this day present in there. So it's not the whole Torah and the whole
Yeah,
Injil,
yeah,
which
yeah.
way is corrupted. Neither do we say the whole Torah and Injil is preserved to this day.
Okay, but where does it say anywhere that the whole, because this is such a massive claim to say that the books I'm required to believe in, which are the Torah and the Injil, are so corrupt that there is no profit in reading them whatsoever.
Who said it's so corrupt?
I think that's the claim you just made.
No, I didn't make the claim. I said these books have
Yeah.
remnants of truth in them. I've repeated this several times now.
Okay, yeah.
Now, when you read that verse,
Yes.
Allah is talking about a specific reference, which is the mention of Prophet Muhammad in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So the mention of Prophet Muhammad, okay, is in both the books to this day. And if you look at Isaiah 42, yes, you see the mention of a servant from God, yes,
Yeah.
who the people of Selah and the people of Kedar, yes, the dwellers of Kedar, they will rejoice. And these both places, the people where the children of Kedar reside,
Yeah.
is in Saudi Arabia, and Selah is basically a mountain which is like very close to the Masjid al-Haram in Medina.
So that would be an
The Prophet's
example
mosque.
of the verses that are uncorrupt, that are within
Yes,
this corrupt
yes,
body.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
I see what you're saying. But I'm still trying to reconcile what you've just said to mean that the Torah and the Injil have been identified as, apart from having a few shreds, it's almost gone the opposite. Instead of just having some corruption, it's totally corrupt, but with some shreds of light in it, seems to be the proposition that you've just made.
Yeah, I didn't-
Unless you
I
could
didn't
show
use
me
the-
lots and
yeah.
lots more.
I didn't
Because-
use the word shreds.
Sure, I
So
know.
what I'm saying is that
Okay.
the best way to identify which is corrupt, which is actually the true Torah and the Injil,
Yeah.
the remnants of that,
Yeah.
is if the message agrees with the Quran and the Hadith, then
Because
yes,
it's the criteria.
that message then is
Yeah.
which is still the truth, still remaining.
What do you think, Hashim, about Waraka's gospel? Because I didn't know he had one until, who was the guy who was your friend who was here before? What's his name? We had a good
Oh,
conversation.
Zakir, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Zakir Hussain.
When he said, and we both kind of smiled, where he said, you know, the Torah and the Injil have enough to bring you to Muhammad. He said, you know, there is enough truth still within the Torah and the Injil. And then he mentioned that Waraka had, and I thought, I think about 6 months ago, I kind of made the claim that he couldn't have had them because they were being. But then, what do you think of this? This is Sahih Bukhari. It says.
Sorry, Colin, can I-
No, this is really,
Okay.
come straight back. It's talking about Waraka. I'll be very, very brief on this. It said Waraka, who was a Christian convert.
Waraka.
Yeah, Waraka. I'll say it again. I want to get
Waraka.
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 No need to say Ra.
All right.
Just Waraka.
Okay. I'm not going to say it now, Waraka, right? Who was a Christian convert and used to read the gospel in Arabic. Now this is saying there was a Arabic gospel that Waraka had that used to read, and not only that, it also says during the pre-Islamic period, Waraka became a Christian, he used to write the writing with Hebrew letters. He would write the gospel in Hebrew as much as Allah wished him to. And there's only one more verse here, and it also says Waraka became a Christian and used to write the Arabic writing and used to write the Gospels in Arabic. So the Gospels that Waraka was writing, were they corrupt or uncorrupt?
Look, what Waraka was writing
Yeah.
is based on what he got from the other Jewish people. So he was a scribe. All he was doing is copying and pasting it. If you look in modern language today, yeah, that's all he was doing. As far as whether it was the truth, whether it was corrupt, that is something else. You see what I mean?
So what you're saying is,
Now-
what Waraka was doing was writing from this corrupt Torah the true parts and writing them down, extracting from them.
Waraka was not a Muslim. Okay?
No.
So he wouldn't necessarily abide by the same rules that the Muslims would. So as Muslims, we would look it through the lens and the prism of the Quran and Sunnah, unlike Waraka.
Yeah.
That's the difference between Muslims and people who are not Muslims, even at that time.
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so going back to the first question which I asked you,
Yeah.
how will you, as a Christian who believes in the sanctity and the truth within the Torah, which you have in your hands today, how will you verify what Moses said exactly after more than 1,000 years without any sources to back up the truth and verify it?
As far as is humanly possible to verify, and using the earliest as the truest being the route that I'm going to take, the proposition for you would be, can you show me a better method than the earliest? So you've just said that there's no way of confirming that my 900-year pre-Islamic Torah is actually the Torah that is being referred to even in this.
Yeah, but
can you
Colin-
see there's a
Colin-
dichotomy in what you just said?
No.
Without this, and without you showing me any, this is your only source. There is no other
got the
Islamic
Quran.
source. But you.
We got the Quran, we don't need that.
But you've also got the Torah and the Injil.
No, but we don't need the Torah and Injil. Colin, you need to understand. You see, the Quran is called the criterion, yes? And it is something which supersedes everything that came before it.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah.
Al-Furqan, the Quran is something which is called Al-Muhaymin, yes?
Yeah.
Al-Muhaymin, which means it basically supersedes everything that came before it. And it is what we believe as the truth. Everything else for us is irrelevant. So for example,
Yeah,
let
go
me
on,
tell you.
yeah.
If there was no Torah remaining, not even a small part of it, yes, or there's no Injil remaining, not even a small part of it, it
Yeah.
won't make an iota of a difference to us. Because as far as we are concerned, we got the Quran with us. And the Quran is enough for our salvation.
Do you ever?
We don't need the Torah and
sure.
Injil.
Do you ever think why there are no even fragmentary evidences of this Quranically acceptable Torah and Injil, which you are required to believe?
No,
Why
no,
are
we are
there
not
not? See this. Can I just read this one? It
No,
says-
but
and I'm
hold on,
reading this-
Colin. With all due
Colin,
respect,
honestly,
I've
yeah.
asked you this several times now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you always project the question back to me. So once again, I'm
right,
asking you.
I'm gonna hold on to what you're saying, go on.
Without using the Quran, without using anything else, how will you verify the message that Moses gave you,
Yes.
that you find in
I
your
thought-
Old Testament today?
I thought I
is-
actually had started to reply to that. It's because the
How will you
copy-
verify it?
Sure. As far as is humanly ascertainable, all the archaeological evidence and the confirmation of the two communities, the Christians and the Jews, all confirm what I've got in my possession are the earliest.
What do you mean by archaeological? So have you got any archaeological evidence?
Do you know of any Jews? Do you know any Jews who reject the Tanakh?
Colin, I'm asking you. I'm not asking the Jews. I'm asking you.
Right.
Because you believe in the Old Testament from God. It's from God. Is that right?
I believe that the Old Testament is inspired by God and was
Good.
accepted by
Okay.
the Jews whom we claim.
You mentioned
descent from.
archaeological evidence. Can you
Yes.
give me one archaeological evidence that Moses even existed?
One archaeological evidence.
Yes.
Well, you know, I can show you the.
Not that I don't believe Moses exists. Of course, as a Muslim, I believe Moses exists. But because you mentioned that to be your main criteria for verification,
No, that's a
I would
real-
ask you,
that is a good
how
point.
would you verify that Moses even existed from archaeological evidence?
It's a very, very good point. Now, in the Torah, what we have, the Torah are the first 5 books. Some people use the word Torah interchangeably to mean the whole of the Old Testament, but the Torah isn't. It's the first 5 books.
No, actually, the Jews use a loose definition and a more specific
It was
definition.
disputed, but generally speaking, like in this Tanakh, it says Torah on the first 5 books.
First 5 books, that's fine. We can stick to that.
Hashim
No
has
problem.
just said, what evidences have you got concerning Moses
Verify.
outside of this? Okay.
Archaeological evidence.
Right. Just bear with me one moment. Right, see this? This is a picture of the Temple of Solomon. Okay? You'll find within the first 5 books of the Torah enmeshed, meaning they're not isolated verses you can pull out. Within the first 5 books, going from Genesis through to Deuteronomy, the whole history of the people is enmeshed in God's presence with them in temple worship. So let's just examine the Temple of Solomon. I take it you agree there was such a thing as the Temple of
No,
Solomon?
but that diagram you got there, that was a recent picture. It's not something that you find. You cannot go to Israel and find the Temple of Solomon and take a picture of it. You know what I mean?
This is based on the archaeological foundations that they found in Jerusalem, but also taken from the descriptions within the Torah. And here we have, look, this is a little bit more. You can actually see where the Holy of Holies was. Okay, now I'm glad we've kind of developed here because
I still want to know.
I will.
Yeah, Moses'
the Jews,
existence.
no, the Jews.
So we know the temple existed. Let's say the temple existed. How do we know Moses existed? If the temple existed, how do you know Moses existed? Because many people built temples then, back then.
You will find that in the Torah, the connection between Moses and God and the Jewish people from their captivity through to their release from captivity, through their journey in the wilderness, to the tabernacle which went with them, which was the tent of meeting where God dwelt, right through to the foundations of the temple, which was the house of God. And I've got every piece of evidence I need to...
I still can't connect that with Moses.
Okay.
How will you connect the dots to Moses?
Okay. Here we go. Right. Jews, when they pray in which direction? They pray towards the east. Okay. When they're outside of the land of Israel, they pray towards Israel. When they're in Jerusalem, when they're in Israel, they pray towards Jerusalem. When they're in Jerusalem, towards the temple. When they're in the temple, towards the Holy of Holies. Okay, this is an undisputed fact. This is the reason they do that. And why do they point towards the Holy of Holies? Because it was the dwelling place of God.
Still no Moses.
Well, if you want to have a look through the Torah,
No, you have to tell me.
you will see.
Colin, you have to tell me. The evidence for Moses. That's all. We're trying to establish that.
Okay. Right. The first action that happened to the Jewish people was when they escaped from the captivity in Egypt. And the Lord went before them by day and night in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire. The Lord went with them. Moses was with them.
Is that from the Bible?
Moses,
Is that
yes,
from the Bible?
yeah.
So this is called circular reference. You said you'll provide something outside.
I'll get to the punchline, which is the temple.
Outside the Bible.
Which is the temple. Then the cloud comes to the tent of meeting. This is the proto-temple. What you see here is replicated in the foundations of the
Again, a
temple
diagram
in Jerusalem.
which is made up by an artist.
No, I will break it down. I'll break it down.
Let's see the evidence for Moses, because I still haven't seen one.
Now,
So you see how difficult it is even to produce simple evidence
No, it
of the
isn't.
existence of Moses,
Very, very
let alone trying to find or verify what the Bible says or the Torah says that they hold today.
okay.
This is just based on Colin's earlier assertion that there is evidence, archaeological evidence.
Yeah.
We haven't found any archaeological evidence to suggest that Moses existed so far.
Okay, have you found, has there been archaeological...
Don't ask me question for a question, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well,
Just
I'll
answer
make
the question.
I'm going to make this statement,
Go
right?
on.
The temple in Jerusalem very clearly shows that the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, was placed in a sanctuary there, and you will see Moses' relationship all through the Old Testament. And the highlight of the whole thing is when God, who commanded this to be made,
That's made by
when
an
that
artist.
was when that was placed, do you know where this ended
But
up?
that's made by an artist. Do you really think it looked like that?
Do you believe it existed?
It might have existed. I'm not saying that.
Do you
I need
believe-
evidence.
Do you believe it exists?
Colin, I even know Moses existed. Okay? But what I'm saying is because you
Yeah.
made this assertion
Yeah.
that we have archaeological evidence, X, Y, and Z, then I want to hold you to that standard. You see what I mean?
Sure.
So once you make a statement, you need to substantiate it.
I will
So
do.
far, Colin, you haven't provided a shred of evidence to suggest that Moses existed from outside.
Yeah, go. I'm talking to you, not to the camera. Sorry,
that's fine. You can talk to me.
Okay, Hashim, can you see here, right? It actually shows a diagram of what was going on in the temple. Have you any knowledge about what goes on in the temple?
That wasn't my question.
No, but I'm going to build to the fact that Moses is
used to-
intertwined with the whole of this
Yeah,
history
there was
of the
burnt
Jewish
offerings
people.
and all that going on in that particular temple.
Do you know what the Holy of Holies was all about?
It was where they used to provide the burnt offerings.
No, see, this is where, when we first had this conversation, I struggled to understand how Hashim and Mansour could not identify this.
You didn't ask
This
me
is
that.
the ark. No, when this is a long time ago. This is a long time.
But you didn't. That's the first time you're showing me that picture.
What, today?
Yes.
This
That's
is
the first time. First time you're showing me this picture. So do not claim that Hashim and Mansour couldn't identify that, because when you talk about the tabernacle, yes,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is what you're trying to show me that.
Yes.
This itself, do you think it actually
Yeah.
looked like that, Colin?
Yes,
How would you know that?
because it's described in
That is
here.
that is made by an artist.
If you want to,
You don't have the artifact to provide evidence that it looked like that.
Here's one. Look,
Exactly,
And,
yes.
let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. The pattern, hang on, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of its furnishings are supplied by God in the Torah, which you are required to
The
believe.
pattern. The
He
pattern.
designed it.
Okay, when you
God
say wait,
designed it.
when you say the pattern,
Yes.
okay, which verse mentions the pattern that the design look exactly like that? Let's see now from the Bible. Go on. Because I remember about the ark made by Noah. It gives the dimensions and everything. Okay, that's the same thing with the temple. It's got the dimensions and everything. But the ark of the covenant, the patterns, I would like to see that gone from the Bible.
25:8. So what you're asking me, Hashim, is to
By the way,
show
we are again
you-
sidetracking because the question was about Moses.
Yeah.
The existence of Moses.
The existence of Moses.
Yes.
You believe Moses existed?
As a Muslim, I believe, based on my scripture, but because you use the standard of archaeology,
Yeah.
I want to hold you for that particular standard that you asserted. So because you use archaeology, I would like you to show us an archaeological evidence, i.e. mention or particular inscription, like the hieroglyphics.
Sure.
They had inscriptions way before even Moses' time, when they used to actually inscribe on the wall. So this particular statement that you made earlier, that we didn't have the papyrus, it would actually fall apart and all that. Look, there are other ways of preserving the text.
Hashim,
The papers are not the only one. The papyrus is not the only one.
What we have in Exodus, going from Exodus 38 through to 40, is where God actually commands a whole array of different things to be made. He actually puts the pattern for the high priest's breastplate, for the ephod, for everything else. And this is where it actually brings Moses into it.
No, bring the tabernacle, because you were going to show us the reference to the tabernacle.
Then they brought the tabernacle to Moses. Will that do you?
No,
Then
that won't
they
do.
brought
Carry on.
the tabernacle to Moses with the tent and its furnishings. They brought Moses and the tabernacle are intertwined. Would you agree?
So Colin, did you see any description of the tabernacle, what it looked like in that verse?
Okay.
I did.
Yeah. So you're saying
I'm
that
saying-
you doubt
No,
that
I'm
he
saying
designed it.
you show me the evidence from the Bible that the tabernacle
Hashim,
looked like this.
Hold on to this for me.
Looked
please,
like
25,
this
mate.
particular diagram by an artist,
Yeah.
which has got two
If I
little
can.
cherubs on it with wings. So you got children, basically children without clothes with wings. These are called cherubs. Yes?
Angels.
Isn't this what the Lord is going
Cherub.
to use in the heavens or something? It's going to be. I don't know if they'll be writing that or
Okay, here you are. Here you are. Are you ready then?
Yeah, go
okay.
on.
They shall make an ark of acacia wood. God is even telling you what wood it's made of. 2.5 cubits long, a cubit and a half wide. He gives you the dimensions.
Okay.
Right, overlay it with pure gold. Overlay it inside and out. And make upon it a gold moulding round about. Cast 4 gold rings on it for the poles to go through. God has really given you a lot.
Remember,
Hang on,
no-
Hashim,
there's
can
no
I
4
carry
wings
on?
here.
Hang on. make poles of acacia and overlay them with gold. Then insert the poles into the rings and the side walls of the ark for carrying it. Look, you can see
That's
the
fine,
ring,
yeah,
right, for carrying the ark. The poles shall remain and the rings of the ark shall not be removed. You shall make a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. Make 2 cherubim of gold. Make them of hammered work at the ends of the 2 covers. Make 1 cherub at one end, and the other cherub at the other, and at one piece of cover you shall make a cherubim at 2 ends. This is very important. Do you know why the cherubim are there? Because you'll find out. The cherubim shall have their wings spread out above, shielding the cover with their wings. They shall confront each other, the faces of the cherubim being turned towards the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark after depositing inside the ark the pact which I will give you. You have every single piece of this ark commanded by God, and you are totally incorrect.
Listen to this, Colin. Do you see this design here? No, listen.
You aren't going to say what about this?
Yes, everything. Because what you're saying is that if it looked exactly like that, then it should have every single detail. For example, this big circle, this looks like some sort of a symbol. I don't know exactly what it is, but no mention of that here. Then we got some drawings in the corners here. Again, no mention of that in that the description that he gave there. The cherubs, how do we know what they look like? Just because they're made of gold doesn't mean they have to look like that.
Saying
So that's all. This is an artist's description.
What we've got
from the rough description in the Bible. No, what I'm saying is that we cannot know exactly what it looks like.
Okay.
This is an artist's representation, which is exactly what I told him earlier.
Okay.
Have an idea.
What we
Yes,
have
you can have an
here.
idea.
Okay, can I just finish this off? Okay. What we have here is something that was commanded by God to be made. This is an artist's impression based on all of the instructions that God gave him. The two of those go hand in hand.
And a bit more.
Now,
And the artist added a bit more to
and
it.
we also have Moses involved. He was receiving the instructions. Now Hashim said, where does Moses fit in?
It doesn't. Just because an artist made an inscription, made a representation of the Ark of the Covenant based on the Bible description. Remember what he said? You said, you said you have archaeological evidence. Do we have the Ark of the Covenant in existence today?
No, we don't.
There you go. So it cannot be used as an archaeological evidence.
Okay.
What you're using again is circular reference from the Bible that it might have looked like that, and that's all it is. It has got nothing to do with archaeology. Colin.
Okay.
So back to square one.
Okay, now we'll move on. First of all,
No, we don't move on. You haven't provided evidence for Moses. I'm sorry.
Hashim asked me to provide him of any evidence that God gave instructions for no, first of all, no, what I just unpacked there wasn't to do with the archaeological things. It was to do with, no, you asked me when it came to this, show me anywhere, and they saw the picture, show me where God commanded that to be made, that to be made, and that to be made. I showed you.
Colin, my first question was what?
Perfect, exactly.
It wasn't exactly like that. You know that very well. There was no reference. Look, there's no mention of what these designs are. Do you agree? There's no mention. No, look, I can make a little box here and we'll still match that particular reference. All I'm saying is that how will you connect an artist's representation of what is mentioned in the Old Testament? How will you connect this to Moses?
His name is actually mentioned just prior to the whole.
That's still not archaeological evidence.
Okay.
So do you agree? Look, either you admit that you don't have any archaeological evidence to back up